individual liberty, my own thoughts, and a bit on Styxhexenmammer666's cone theory. If I may toot my own horn here, folks, for just a moment, the visuals that you see in this video, the nature photography and the diagrams, are my own creations, as is the music that you hear. Folks, in this video I'm going to discuss my own personal philosophy about individual liberty. It goes something like this. I assert my own individual liberty, and I respect that of others. And if you try to violate my individual liberty, I'm going to punch you in your fucking face. Or worse, okay? And there you go. That's it, in a nutshell. You can end this video now if you want to, or if you want to hear me elaborate on this, here we go. I establish my individual liberty. I respect your individual liberty. Sorry folks, I don't have any script for this, I'm just going to talk off my head, so bear with me if I pause and I hem and haw. If you're familiar with enough of my videos, folks, then you know that I'm actually a lot more concerned about the polarity between authoritarianism and libertarianism, or let's say collectivism and individualism, than I'm concerned with left versus right. Most people think in terms of only left versus right, and it seems that if they're somewhat aware of the difference between authoritarianism or collectivism on the one hand and libertarianism, individualism on the other hand, then they sort of squash whatever one they don't like into the left or the right, depending on who's their opponent. For example, right-wing libertarians will associate authoritarianism with the left wing in general, not recognizing that there is authoritarian right, libertarian right, authoritarian left, and libertarian left. And then, let's say, an authoritarian leftist, they might think anarchists or libertarians are necessarily right-wing, when this is not the case. Now, if you're trying to walk across some territory and your map is one-dimensional, all you have is a line saying go this way, well, you're gonna get lost. It's not a very accurate map for the territory. If you have a two-dimensional map of the territory, well, that's a lot more accurate. So you go from something like this to something like this, and you have more information, you have a better map, the map suits the territory better. And then you can add a third dimension. This is what Styxhexenmammer666 was talking about not very long ago, if I remember correctly. I may have his model wrong, but I think he was describing something like this. So you take the two-dimensional political map and you extend it into the third dimension in the shape of a cone. Centrists on the left and centrists on the right are not very different from each other, so they are closer together at the tip of the cone, so that would represent sameness, absolute center, absolute sameness. And as you go down, you go left, right, up, down, the difference increases. So I took the liberty of sort of labeling these things. L is left, R is right, LI is libertarian / individualist, AC is authoritarian / collectivist, and as you move away from the center, the differences increase. Now we add the third dimension. I'm going to label left versus right DP1. Get your mind out of the gutter. DP stands for difference, pole 1, because there is the difference between the left-right polarity, and DP2, which means difference, pole 2, the difference between authoritarianism and libertarianism, or if you like to put it this way, between collectivism and individualism. Again, differences increase as you move away from that center pole. If I understood, or if I remember Styxhexenmammer666's idea, he's adding the third dimension just to illustrate that the difference increases as you move away from the center. Here's the thing, I failed to see why that third dimension is really useful. It's already mapped in the two dimensions. You go further away from the center of the two-dimensional map and you get more difference. So I think the third dimension that Styx wants to enter there is superfluous, unless I misunderstand or don't remember correctly what he said about his cone theory. At any rate, even if I am being stupid or ignorant, for the purposes of this video we'll just deal with the 2 dimensions because the third is not really necessary and may complicate things. Now of course it's very difficult if not impossible to be entirely individualistic. I mean, you know, it's very rare that someone can live on their own completely not involved in society in any way. Even people who try to live like that out in the forest, out in the mountains, they do meet with each other at least once every few months or something, and you know, they go into town and they get some supplies they can't otherwise manufacture out there in the woods by themselves. So you can't have pure individualism, nor can you have pure collectivism. There needs to be some sort of a balance. Now that doesn't mean that it has to be 50%/50%. Some of us will never accept that. So again, I want to talk about individualism today, or libertarianism, or liberalism, individual liberty, because I lean far more towards the individualist/libertarian side of things than I do to the collectivist/authoritarian. Now, I'm not a total anarchist or anything like that. What I'm going to say today is not informed by John Stuart Mill or John Locke. I haven't read On Liberty, etc. I haven't watched the video by Sargon about liberalist. That's the word I think it is. I don't know what that means to him. I've intentionally not watched that. And this is not informed on any, book or any philosopher or any politician, what they have to say about the matter. It's just going to be my own thoughts. So I am far more individualist or libertarian than I am authoritarian or collectivist, and it's far more important to me than the difference between left and right. And I see an alarming increase of people, at least on social media, who are just pretty much all over the place, and they're almost all in their younger 20s or something like that, where they argue for the collectivist or the authoritarian standpoint. Sometimes consciously so, and sometimes they claim to be anarchists or anarcho-syndicalists or anarcho-communists, and yet their arguments are all based on authoritarianism. They want the government to force people to do this, or the government to stop that, and then they say things like, "my civil liberties," or "my free speech," you know, to deride the idea of free speech. Like it's somehow something to mock when you're for individual liberties. That's somehow funny, or I don't know, just ha ha ha. No argument, just laughing. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. So somebody can rightly ask, upon what are you basing your individualist outlook on, or upon what do you assert your individual rights? Now here's something that the early 20s or the 20-somethings on the far left and the older people who teach them in colleges do not seem to understand. The following should go without saying, but I argue with a lot of these people. They do not seem to understand. When you argue for individual liberty, one of their arguments that they come back with is, well, if you have your individual liberty, that means you just have the freedom to oppress people. No, that's not how that works, okay? Individual liberty, the idea is that every person has the same liberty, okay? So we have certain, let's say, borders, and you don't cross certain lines. You know, I think everybody knows the phrase, "my freedom to swing my fist around ends at the tip of your nose." That's just common sense. You don't need, say, a Bill of Rights to really show you that. That's just something that you really just should know. Having individual liberty does not mean that you have the freedom to exploit, say, helpless people, because they have the right to not be molested by you. And I mean that in both senses of the word. And that's just common sense. And I'm not talking about just constitutional rights, although I am kind of talking about that too. I'm thinking more globally, or say humanistically, okay? Because I am sort of a secular humanist. I like the whole Enlightenment ideal thing, the secular thing, the individual liberty thing. And I think that every human being has individual liberty. So you may ask, okay, based upon what? Is it a God-given thing? Well, no, I don't think so. I don't believe in God. Is it just something that the state gives you? Well, no, I don't think the state really has the power to bestow individual liberty upon you. They can, well, we the people have and can otherwise constrain governments to, well, basically respect our individual liberty and refrain from violating those individual liberties. Because otherwise, torches, pitchforks, revolution, okay? So I'm not making a metaphysical argument at all. I'm not making a religious argument. I'm not even making a legalistic argument. I'm not sure what kind of argument you can describe my argument as, but it just basically goes like this. I will assert my individual liberty whether you like it or not, okay? And I prefer nonviolence. I prefer pacifism. However, if I have to engage in violence to prevent you from preventing me from exercising my liberties, I will do so. And I'm also the kind of person, well, I normally, if I'm attacked, I very rarely do hit back because I usually do not have to. However, if I choose to do so, I have that right. So in other words, if you shove me, I can just punch you square in the face. If you enter my house without my permission and I tell you to get out and you don't, I can just punch you square in the face, okay? If you punch me and you haven't knocked me out, well, I can just knock you the heck out, and I probably should, although I usually show, you know, I exercise probably more restraint than I have to, and that's actually led to me getting hit many times because, well, anyway. So that's basically the core of my argument, the bedrock of my argument. It's not that I have individual liberty because of some sort of God-given right or because of the Constitution, although I do think the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is very important. That's not where my argument is. It's not metaphysical, it's not religious, it's not legalistic. It is simply I have my individual liberty, whether you like it or not. I respect that of others as well. And there are millions of other people like me who assert their own individual liberty and respect the individual liberty of others. And we will quickly band together, although we are usually individualists, we'll quickly band together if you insist on violating our rights. So for example, the people who responded to February 1st in UC Berkeley, who showed up on March 4th, they had that in mind. These were all individuals. They didn't know each other, but they knew something had to be done to assert individual liberty. And then again on April 15th, only more so. So there are many people who are individualists who do not like groups, but who will come together to oppose you if you try to take away our liberty. Not because of a religion, not because of laws, but because we simply assert that through our will. And it has a lot to do with will, by the way. Individual will. Free will. I assert my own individual liberty and respect that of others because that's simply what I have decided by my own free will. Those who would assert otherwise can, well, you can go kill yourself for all I care. Or, if you actively try to subvert my own free will, well then you deserve whatever I do in retaliation, man. Now, of course, you know the phrase eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and then there's the criticism of that, which is eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, which, you know, that's a fair criticism. I say 2 eyes for an eye. In other words, if I'm minding my own business and someone comes along and they put out one of my eyes, would it be wise for me to put out one of theirs? Because then what do? They'll put out my other eye. Now, I'm blind and they have 1 eye. And as you know, in the kingdom of the blind, the 1-eye are king. In other words, he has the advantage. So it doesn't make sense to do an eye for an eye. What makes sense is if someone puts out your eye, you take out both of their eyes. Besides, number one, you were minding your own business and they decided to do that to you, so, you know, maybe they are a menace to society in general, and you better, say, take away their ability to put out other people's eyes by putting out their eyes. Now, you could say, that's a violation of their individual liberty. Well, yes, they crossed the border and they declared war, so there you go. So I believe in minding your own business and respecting the individual liberties of others, but I also believe in severe retaliation when somebody else or some group violates your individual liberty. By individual liberty, I mean the following, but not just the following, but things like freedom of communication, which would include freedom of speech, freedom of the press, or text, or whatever communications may develop in the future. Freedom of assembly, or peaceful assembly, freedom of association. If it were possible to have a system of anarchy that would be peaceful, you know, if it were possible to have a society where no government and no police, no sort of policing force was needed whatsoever, that's great. Awesome. Obviously, we aren't there yet. It's possible for groups of people, select individuals, to go off and, let's say, live a collectivist life in a commune, make a little village in a garden and raise livestock, and not have anything like police. That is certainly possible. However, you can't expect, say, thousands of people to live in such a society, let alone millions or a few billion. Not possible. At least not yet. I think in the future, possibly. I hope so, anyway. But unfortunately, at this stage in history, we need things like, unfortunately, governments or something like police to prevent people from violating the individual liberties of other people. And sometimes we realize that in certain times and places, even though we do have governments and we do have police, they are not going to do anything to prevent angry mobs from violating our individual liberties. I'm talking about Berkeley, San Francisco, Portland, and so on. But as I said, it could work on a small scale. I'm talking about things like the temporary autonomous zone, or maybe the more permanent autonomous zone. But for society at large, at least at this stage in human evolution, police and government to some extent are necessary evils, unfortunately. But anyway, the government that governs best is the one that, say, does the least, or the least necessary, but does step in if necessary to, say, protect individual liberties. So folks, I don't have any great metaphysical treatise, any sort of philosophical diatribe. It comes down to this. I assert individual liberties and respect that of others, and there are many other people who are like that, and thank goodness for that. And basically, I assert my individual liberty with force if I have to, but I'd rather not, so just have it, you just don't push me. But there you go, that's it, that's where I stand. Now I could read John Stuart Mill and John Locke and feel like they haven't influenced my, thinking, and I don't know, I could change my mind on things, but I don't really see that happening. It just comes down to my own stubborn, indomitable will. It's just about my will, my individual liberty, my own will. And if you need me to put it more concretely, okay, here it goes. I'll never stop drawing Muhammad on Everybody Draw Muhammad Day or otherwise, or whenever I feel like it. I'll never stop criticizing Islam. I'll never stop criticizing the regressive left. I'll never stop criticizing political correctness, postmodernism, SJWs, all that sort of bullshit. I'll never stop criticizing the far right, the sort of fascism that, some of these people are rising on the far right in reaction to the extreme regressive left Antifa types. I'll never stop criticizing anything I want to criticize. I'll never shut up. I will never stop, and no one will ever make me stop. That's it. Non serviam. Until next time, folks, singula libertatem, aequalis potestas. Individual liberty, equal opportunity. Hey, don't click off this video yet. I want to tell you that my best and most controversial videos are not available on YouTube, and I want to tell you how to see them. Things are changing for controversial content creators like myself. These media monopolies like Google and specifically YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. do not want us. They don't want us to say what we say, to expose what we expose, and to make the waves that we do. So they take more and more measures to make us give up. They pander to the far left, the regressive left, the social justice warrior, politically correct crowd who accepts, well, demands the censorship that these companies want us all to accept, or which force us to accept. To make a long story short, you should, like myself, expect my YouTube channel to disappear any day now. By all means, please subscribe to me on YouTube and click that little bell icon, and do the same for my backup YouTube channel, Justin Fidel. But please subscribe to me on Speak Out, formerly called BitChute. Oh wait, they changed it back to BitChute. Hopefully they won't change it again by the time you see this, sorry everyone. And on Minds, where you can find my best, most controversial videos. By all means, friend me, follow me, etc. on Facebook, but I want to encourage you to use Minds or Gab or something else instead of Facebook and Twitter, etc. Scroll down and see the links to all of my channels and social media accounts. Also see the Facebook group Womansplaining with Tabitha for Womansplaining with Tabitha videos and lots of photos and videos of the lovely Tabitha. I also want to tell you that I will no longer use Twitter because Twitter requires that I delete a bunch of tweets before I can do anything else, and out of principle, to set a good example, I will not do that. To make a long story short, I got into a Twitter war with the famous rapper and rabidly racist Talib Kweli Green, embarrassed the living snot out of him, and well, for the long story, see the video below. Alright folks, until next time, truth, honor, personal integrity, reason, responsibility, peace, love, freedom, equal opportunity, and individuality. Thanks for watching.